Hey fan gang, hope you all had a fantastic Monday. Today, we are returning to reading Public Domain after our nice break from finishing Dracula in December, because it took me a few months. Today, we are reading, The Time in the Gods by Lord Dunsany. This is, I believe, the book he wrote after The Gods of Pegana. I don't know if they are related story-wise. I'm guessing not. Okay, there we go. I'll put on my reading glasses. Let's switch over to there. Yeah, give me a second to put on the music. I had a day. It was a day of all time. I had a tummy ache at work, but I was really brave about it. As you do. You gotta be brave. There we go. Got our music. Boy, I cut that in at just the right time for the throat singing. Okay, Time in the Gods by Lord Dunsany, written in 1906, I think. Somewhere around that. I think Gods of Pegana was 1905, and this was 1906, if I remember right. Alright, a sip of tea to get us started. Now let us get into this with the first image. The opulence of Vaughn, in commas, no, parentheses. Usury? Usury means something. What does that mean? Practice of lending money and charging interest. Huh. Okay, that's an interesting image to open the book with. I'm into it. Let's see. Yeah, written 1906. 10 full-page illustrations. So fancy. Preface. These tales are the things that befell gods and men in Yarnith, Averon, and Zarkandu, and in the other countries of my dreams. Give me a second, my camera's looking weird. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay. Now into chapter... Come on. Time of the Gods, chapter part 1. Once, when the gods were young and only their swarthy servant time was without age. We're on the first line and I wasn't expecting that. The swarthy servant time. Okay. Once, when the gods were young and only their swarthy servant time was without age, the gods lay sleeping by a broad river upon the earth. There, in a valley that from all the earth the gods had set apart for their repose, the gods dreamed marble dreams. And with domes and pinnacles, the dreams arose and stood up proudly between the river and the sky, all shimmering white to the morning. In the city's midst, the gleaming marble of 1,000 steps climbed to the citadel, where rose 4 pinnacles beckoning to heaven. And midmost between the pinnacles, there stood the dome, vast as the gods had dreamed it. All around, terrace by terrace, there went marble lawns well guarded by onyx lions, and carved with effigies of all the gods striding amid the symbol of the worlds. With a sound like tinkling bells, far off in a land of shepherds hidden by some hill, the waters of many fountains turned against home. Then the gods awoke, and there stood Sardathrion. Not to common men have the gods given to walk Sardathrion's streets, and not to common eyes to see her fountains. Only to those to whom in lonely passes in the night the gods have spoken, leaning through the stars, to those that have heard the voices of the gods above the morning, or seen their faces bending above the sea. Only to those hath it given to see Sardathrion, to stand where her pinnacles gather together in the night fresh from the dreams of gods. Around the valley, a great desert lies through which no common traveler may come. But those whom the gods have chosen feel suddenly a great longing at heart in crossing the mountains that divide the desert from the world, set out across it driven by the gods, till hidden in the desert's midst, they find the valley at last, and look with eyes upon Sardathrion. I really like that word, Sardathrion. Also, the gods sleeping by a river in a valley, if I remember right, that was very specific in the gods of Pagana. So it's possible this is a continuation, or it's also possible it's another cycle, because in the gods of Pagana, what was his name? The chief deity who dreamed up the gods, and the gods dreamed up men or whatever. Whenever that chief deity awoke, he erased everything to restart the cycle. So those are two options. Another option is that this is completely unrelated. But man, I really like that word, Sardathrion. In the desert beyond the valley grow myriad thorns, all pointing towards Sardathrion. So may many that the gods have loved come to the Marble City, but none can return. For other cities are no fitting home for men whose feet have touched Sardathrion's marble streets. For even the gods have not been ashamed to come in the guise of men with their cloaks wrapped about their faces. Therefore, no city shall ever hear the songs that are sung in the marble citadel by those in whose ears have rung the voices of the gods. No report shall ever come to other lands of the music of the fall of Sardathrion's fountains, when the waters which went heavenward return again to the lake, where the gods cool their brows, sometimes in the guise of men. None may ever hear the speech of the poets of that city, to whom the gods have spoken. It stands a city aloof. There have been no rumor of it. I alone have dreamed of it, and I may not be sure that my dreams are true. Is the subtext that the narrator is a god because the gods are the ones that dreamed up Sardathrion? I'm not sure. Above the twilight, the gods were seated in the after years, ruling the worlds. No longer now, they walked at evening in the marble city, hearing the fountain splash, or listening to the singing of the men they loved, because it was in the after years, and the work of the gods was to be done. But often, as they rested a moment from doing the work of the gods, from hearing the prayers of men, or sending here the pestilence or their mercy, they would speak a while with one another of the olden years, saying, "Rememberest thou not Sardathrion?" Another would answer, "Ah, Sardathrion, and all Sardathrion's mist-draped marble lawns whereon we walk not now." Then the gods turned to do the work of the gods, answering the prayers of men or smiting them, or ever they sent their swarthy servant Time to heal or overwhelm. And Time went forth into the worlds to obey the commands of the gods. Yet he cast furtive glances at his masters, and the gods distrusted Time because he had known the worlds forever the gods became. Because he had known the worlds or ever the gods became. Some of these lines are written weirdly, and I'm not sure what they mean because of the word order. One day, when furtive Time, I just noticed the music might be low. Let's try that. One day, when furtive time had gone into the worlds, to nimbly smite some city whereof the gods were weary, the gods above the twilight speaking to one another said, surely we are the lords of time, and gods of the worlds besides. See how our city Sardathrion lifts over other cities. Others arise and perish, but Sardathrion standeth yet, the first and the last of cities. Rivers are lost in the sea and streams forsake the hills, but ever Sardathrion's fountains arise in our dream city. As was Sardathrion when the gods were young, so are her streets today as a sign that we are the gods. Suddenly, the swart figure of Time stood up before the gods, with both hands dripping with blood and a red sword dangling idly from his fingers, and said, Sardathrion is gone. I have overthrown it. And the gods said, Sardathrion the marble city, thou hast overthrown it, thou, the slave of the gods? And the oldest of the gods said, Sardathrion, and is Sardathrion gone? And furtively, Time looked him in the face and edged towards him, fingering with his dripping fingers the hilt of his nimble sword. Then the gods feared with a new fear that he that had overthrown their city would one day slay the gods. And a new cry went wailing through the twilight, the lament of the gods for their dream city, crying, tears may not bring again Sardathrion, but this the gods may do who have seen, and seen with unrelenting eyes, the sorrows of 10,000 worlds. Thy gods may weep for thee. Tears may not bring again Sardathrion. Believe it not, Sardathrion, that ever thy gods sent this doom to thee. He hath overthrown thee, shall overthrow thy gods. How oft, when night came suddenly on morning, playing in the fields of twilight, did we watch thy pinnacles emerging from the darkness. Sardathrion, dream city of the gods, and thine onyx lions looming limb by limb from the dusk. How often have we sent our child to the dawn to play with thy fountain tops? How often hath evening, loveliest of our goddesses, strayed long upon thy balconies? Let one fragment of thy marble stand up above the dust for thine old gods to caress, as a man, when all else is lost, treasures one lock of the hair of his beloved. Sardathrion, the gods must kiss once more the place where thy streets were once. There were wonderful marbles in thy streets, Sardathrion. We get it, we know what the name is. Sardathrion, the gods weep for thee. Okay, there. The gods sound like whiny bitches, that's the voice they get. The coming of the sea. Once there was no sea, and the gods went walking over the green plains of earth. Upon an evening of forgotten years, the gods were seated on the hills, and all the little rivers of the world lay coiled at their feet asleep, when Slid, the new god, striding through the stars, came suddenly upon earth, flying in a corner of space. And behind Slid, there marched 1,000,000 waves, all following Slid and tramping upon the twilight. And Slid touched earth in one of her great green valleys that divide the south, and here he encamped for the night with all his waves about him. But to the gods, as they sat upon their hilltops, a new cry came crying over the green spaces that lay below the hills, and the gods said, Hey Petra, hope you're doing good. Welcome to some reading. I like to read some public domain here. This is neither the cry of life nor yet the whisper of death. What is this new cry that the gods have never commanded, yet which comes the ears of the gods? And the gods together, shouting, made the cry of the south, calling the south wind to them. They always cry, these gods. Gods of Pagana didn't cry. And again, the gods shouted all together, making the cry of the north, calling the north wind to them. And thus they gathered to them all their winds and sent these four down into the low plains to find what thing it was that called with a new cry, and to drive it away from the gods. Then all the winds harnessed up their clouds and drave forth, till they came to the great green valley that divides the south in twain. And there found Slid with all his waves about him. Then, for a great space, Slid and the four winds struggled with one another, till the strength of the winds was gone, and they limped back to the gods, their masters, and said, "We have met this new thing that has come upon the earth and have striven against its armies, but could not drive them forth. And the new thing is beautiful, but very angry, and is creeping towards the gods." But Slid advanced and led his armies up the valley, and inch by inch, and mile by mile, he conquered the lands of the gods. Then, from their hills, the gods sent down a great array of cliffs of hard, red rocks, and bade them march against Slid. And the cliffs marched down till they came and stood before Slid, and leaned their heads forward and frowned, and stood staunch to guard the lands of the gods against the might of the sea, shutting Slid off from the world. Then Slid sent some of his smaller waves to search out what stood against him, and the cliffs shattered them. But Slid went back and gathered a great horde of his waves, and hurled them against the cliffs, and the cliffs shattered them. And again Slid called up out of his deep a mighty array of waves, and sent them roaring against the guardians of the gods. And the red rocks frowned and smote them. And once again Slid gathered his greater waves, and hurled them against the cliffs. And when the waves were scattered like those before them, the feet of the cliffs were no longer standing firm, and their faces were scarred and battered. Then, into every cleft that stood in the rocks, Slid sent his hugest wave, and others followed behind it. And Slid himself seized hold of the huge rocks with his claws, and tore them down and stamped them under his feet. And when the tumult was over, the sea had won, and over the broken remnants of those red cliffs, the armies of Slid marched on and up the long, green valley. Then the gods heard Slid exulting far away and singing songs of triumph over their battered cliffs. And ever the tramp of his army sounded nearer and nearer in the listening ears of the gods. Then the gods called to their downlands to save their world from Slid, and the downlands gathered themselves together and marched away, a great white line of gleaming cliffs, and halted before Slid. Then Slid advanced no more, and lulled his legions, and while his waves were low, he softly crooned a song such as once long ago had troubled the stars, and brought down tears out of the twilight. Sternly, the white cliffs stood on guard to save the world of the gods. But the song that once had troubled the stars went moaning on awaking pent desires, till full at the feet of the gods the melody fell. Then the blue rivers that lay curled asleep opened their gleaming eyes, uncurled themselves, and shook their rushes, and making a stir among the hills, crept down to find the sea. And passing across the world, they came at last to wonder where the white cliffs stood, and coming behind them, slit them here and there, and went through their broken ranks to Slid at last. And the gods were angry with their traitorous screams. Surprised they didn't cry. They cry for everything else. Then Sled ceased from singing the song that lures the world, and gathered up his legions, and the rivers lifted up their heads with the waves, and all went marching on to assail the cliffs of the gods. And wherever the rivers had broken the ranks of the cliffs, Slid's armies went surging and broke them up into islands, and shattered the islands away. And the gods on their hilltops heard once more the voice of Slid exulting over their cliffs. When Lord Dunsany introduces a new name, he repeats the hell out of it to make sure you know it. Already more than half the world lay subject to Slid, and still his armies advanced. And the people of Slid, the fishes and the long eels, went in and out of the arbors that once were dear to the gods. Then the gods feared for their dominion into the innermost sacred recesses of the mountains, to the very heart of the hills. The gods trooped off together, and there found Tintaggon, a mountain of black marble, staring far over the earth, and spake thus to him with the voices of the gods. O eldest born of our mountains, when first we devised the earth we made thee, and thereafter fashioned fields and hollows, valleys and other hills to lie about thy feet. And now, Tintaggon, thine ancient lords, the gods are facing a new thing which overthrows the old. Go therefore, thou, Tintaggon, and stand up against Slid, that the gods be still the gods, and the earth still green. And hearing the voices of his sires, the elder gods, Tintaggon strode down through the evening, leaving a wake of twilight broad behind him as he strode. And going across the green earth, came down to Ambrady at the valley's edge, and there met the foremost of Slid's fierce armies conquering the world. And against him, Slid hurled the force of a whole bay, which lashed itself high over Tintaggon's knees, and streamed around his flanks, and then fell and was lost. Tintaggon still stood firm for the honor and the dominion of his lords, the elder gods. Then Slid went to Tintaggon and said, Let us now make a truce. Stand thou back from Ambrady, and let me pass through thy ranks, that mine armies may now pass up the valley, which opens on the world of the green earth that dreams around the feet of older gods, shall know the new god Slid. Then shall mine armies strive with thee no more, and thou and I shall be equal lords of the whole earth, when all the world is singing the chant of Slid, and thy head alone shall be lifted above mine armies, when rival hills are dead. And I will deck thee with all the robes of the sea, and all the plunder that I have taken in rare cities shall be piled before thy feet. Tintaggon, I have conquered all the stars, my song swells through the space besides. I come victorious from Mon and Connaught, on the furthest edge of the world. And thou and I are to be equal lords when the old gods are gone, and the green earth knoweth Slid. Behold me gleaming azure, and fair with 1,000 smiles, and swayed by 1,000 moods. And Tintaggon answered, I am staunch and black, and have one mood, and this to defend my masters and their green earth. Then Slid went backwards growling, and summoned together the waves of a whole sea, and set them singing full in Tentagon's face. Then, from Tentagon's marble front, the sea fell backwards, crying onto a broken shore, and ripple by ripple, straggled back to Slid saying, "Tentagon stands!" Far out beyond the battered shore that lay at Tentagon's feet, Slid rested long and sent the Nautilus to drift up and down before Tentagon's eyes. And he and his armies sat singing idle songs of dreamy islands far away to the south, and of the still stars whence they had stolen forth, of twilight evenings, and of long ago. Still, Tentagon stood, with his feet planted fair upon the valley's edge, defending the gods and their green earth against the sea. And all the while, that Sled sang his songs and played with the Nautilus that sailed up and down as he gathers oceans together. One morning, as Sled sang of old outrageous wars, and of most enchanting peace, and of dreamy islands and the south wind and the sun, he suddenly launched 5 oceans out of the deep to attack Tentagon. And the 5 oceans sprang upon Tentagon and passed above his head. One by one, the grip of the oceans loosened, and one by one they fell back into the deep. And still, Tentagon stood. And on that morning, the might of all 5 oceans lay dead at Tentagon's feet. That which Slid had conquered, he still held, and there is now no longer a great green valley in the south, but all that Tentagon had guarded against Slid, he gave back to the gods. Very calm the sea lies now about Tentagon's feet, for he stands all black amid crumpled cliffs of white with red rocks piled about his feet. And often the sea retreats far out along the shore, and often wave by wave comes marching in with the sound of the tramping of armies, that all may still remember the great fight that surged about Tentagon once, when he guarded the gods and the green earth against Slid. Sometimes in their dreams, the war-scarred warriors of Slid still lift their heads and cry their battle cry. Then do dark clouds gather about Tentagon's swarthy brow, and he stands out menacing, seen afar by the ships, where once he conquered Slid. And the gods know well that while Tentagon stands, they and their world are safe, and whether Slid shall one day smite Tentagon is hidden among the secrets of the sea. I like Tentagon. A Legend of the Dawn. When the worlds and all began, the gods were stern and old, and they saw the beginning from under eyebrows hoar with years. All but Inzana, their child, who played with the golden ball. Inzana was the child of all the gods. And the law before the beginning and thereafter was that all should obey the gods. Yet hither and thither went all Pegana's gods to obey the Dawn child, because she loved to be obeyed. This is a continuation of the gods of Pegana. Okay. It was dark all over the world, and even in Pegana, where dwell the gods. It was dark when the child Inzana, the Dawn, first found her golden ball. Then running down the stairway of the gods with tripping feet, Chalcedony Onyx, step by step, she cast her golden ball across the sky. The golden ball went bounding up into the sky, and the Dawn child with her flaring hair stood laughing upon the stairway of the gods, and it was day. So gleaming fields below saw the first day of all the days that the gods have destined. But towards evening, certain mountains, afar and aloof, conspired together to stand between the world and the golden ball, and to wrap their crags about it, and to shut it from the world, and all the world was darkened with their plot. And the dawn child up and Pegana cried for her golden ball. Then all the gods came down the stairway right to Pegana's gate to see what ailed the dawn child, and to ask her why she cried. Then Inzana said that her golden ball had been taken away and hidden by mountains black and ugly, rude, far away from Pegana, all in a world of rocks under the rim of the sky, and she wanted her golden ball and could not love the dark. Thereat, Umberadum, thereat Umberadum, whose hound was the thunder, took his hound in leash, and soared away across the sky after the golden ball, until he came to the mountains afar and aloof. There did the thunder put his nose to the rocks, and bay along the valleys, and fast at his heels followed Umberadum. And the nearer the hound, the thunder, came to the golden ball, the louder did he bay. But haughty and silent stood the mountains, whose plot had darkened the world. All in the dark among the crags in a mighty cavern, guarded by two twin peaks, at last they found the golden ball for which the dawn child wept. Then under the world went Umberadum, with his thunder panting behind him, and came in the dark before the morning from underneath the world, and gave the dawn child back her golden ball. And Inzana laughed and took it with her hands, and Umberadum went back into Pegana, and at its threshold the thunder went to sleep. Again, the dawn child tossed the golden ball far up into the blue sky across the sky. The blue across the sky. And the second morning shone upon the world, on lakes and oceans, and on drops of dew. But as the ball went bounding on its way, the prowling mists and the rain conspired together, and took it and wrapped it in their tattered cloaks, and carried it away. And through the rents in their garments gleamed the golden ball, but they held it fast and carried it right away and underneath the world. Then, on an onyx step, Inzana sat down and wept, who could no more be happy without her golden ball. And again the gods were sorry, and the south wind came to tell her tales of most enchanted islands, to whom she listened not, nor yet to the tales of temples in lone lands that the east wind told her, who had stood beside her when she flung her golden ball. But from far away the west wind came with the news of 3 gray travelers wrapped round with battered cloaks, that carried away between them a golden ball. Then up leapt the north wind, he who guards the pole, and drew his sword of ice out of his scabbard of snow, and sped away along the roads that leads across the blue. And in the darkness underneath the world, he met the 3 gray travelers, and rushed upon them and drove them far before him, smiting them with his sword till their gray cloaks streamed with blood. And out of the midst of them, as they fled with flapping cloaks all red and gray and tattered, he leapt up with the golden ball, and gave it the dawn child. Checkmark. Someone checkmark that paragraph. Strange. Now I'm hoping there's no strange writings in this scan of a library book. You get what you get with public domain. Again, Inzana tossed the ball into the sky, making it the 3rd day, and up it went, and fell towards the fields. And as Inzana stooped to pick it up, she suddenly heard the singing of all the birds that were. All the birds in the world were singing together, and also all the streams. And Inzana sat and listened and thought of no golden ball, nor ever of Chalcedony and onyx, nor of all her fathers the gods, but only of all the birds. Then, in the woods and meadows, where they had all suddenly sung, they suddenly ceased. And Inzana, looking up, found that her ball was lost, and all alone in the stillness, one owl laughed. Owls are a little mean-spirited, to be honest. We like owls, but they're mean-spirited. When the gods heard Inzana crying for her ball, they clustered together on the threshold and peered into the dark, but saw no golden ball. And leaning forward, they cried out to the bat as he passed up and down. Bat, that seest all things, where is the golden ball? And though the bat answered, none heard. And none of the winds had seen it, nor any of the birds. And there were only the eyes of the gods, and the darkness peering for the golden ball. Then said the gods, thou hast lost thy golden ball. Skip the pages, there we go. Thou hast lost thy golden ball. And they made her a moon of silver to roll about the sky. And the child cried and threw it upon the stairway, and chipped and broke its edges, and asked for the golden ball. And Limpang Tung, the lord of music, who was least of all the gods, because the child cried still for her golden ball, stole out of Pagana and crept across the sky, and found the birds, all the world sitting in trees and ivy, and whispering in the dark. He asked them one by one for news of the golden ball. Some had last seen it on a neighboring hill, and others in the trees, though none knew where it was. A heron had seen it lying in a pond, but a wild duck in some reeds had seen it last as she came home across the hills, and then it was rolling very far away. At last the cock cried out that he had seen it lying beneath the world. There, Limpang Tung sought it, and the cock called to him. Sorry. Cock. Nice cock. Called to him through the darkness as he went, until at last he found the golden ball. Then Limpang Tung went up into Pagana and gave it to the dawn child, who played with the moon no more. And the cock and all his tribe called out, "We found it! We found the golden ball!" The cock found the ball. That's funny. Again, Inzana tossed the ball afar, laughing with joy to see it, her hand stretched upwards, her golden hair afloat, and carefully she watched it as it fell. But alas, it fell with a splash into the great sea, and gleamed and shimmered as it fell till the waters became dark above it, and it could be seen no more. And men on the world said, "How the dew has fallen, and how the mist set when in it, and how mist, what the hell? Can't speak something. And how the mist set in with breezes from the streams." Sorry, I was just thinking of the cock and the golden ball. But the dew was the tears of the dawn child, and the mists were her sighs when she said, "There are no more come a time when I play with my ball again, for now it is lost forever." And the gods tried to comfort Inzana as she played with her silver moon, but she would not hear them, and went in tears to Slid, where he played with gleaming sails, and in his mighty treasury turned over gems and pearls, and lorded it over the sea. And she said, "O Slid, whose soul is in the sea, bring back my golden ball." And Slid stood up, swarthy and clad in seaweed, and mightily dived from the last Chalcedony step out of Pagana's threshold straight into ocean. There on the sand, among the battered navies of the Nautilus and broken weapons of the swordfish, hidden by dark water, he found the golden ball. And coming up in the night, all green and dripping, he carried it gleaming to the stairway of the gods, and brought it back to Inzana from the sea. And out of the hands of Slid, she took it and tossed it far and wide over his sails and sea, and far away it shone on lands that knew not Slid, till it came to its zenith and dropped towards the world. But ere it fell, the eclipse dashed out from his hiding, and rushed up the golden ball and seized it in his jaws. When Inzana saw the eclipse bearing her plaything away, she cried aloud to the thunder, who burst from Pagana and fell howling upon the throat of the eclipse, who dropped the golden ball and let it fall towards earth. But the black mountains disguised themselves with snow, and as the golden ball fell down towards them, they turned their peaks to ruby crimson and their lakes to sapphires gleaming amongst silver. And Inzana saw a jeweled casket into which her plaything fell. This child just does not deserve the ball if she keeps losing it. Her parents are spoiling her. But when she stooped to pick it up again, she found no jeweled casket with rubies, silvers, or sapphires, but only wicked mountains disguised in snow that had trapped her golden ball. And then she cried because there is none to find it, for the thunder was far away chasing the eclipse, and all the gods lamented when they saw her sorrow. And Lepang Tung, who was least of all the gods, was yet the saddest at the dawn child's grief. And when the gods said, "Play with your silver moon," he stepped lightly from the rest, and coming down the stairway of the gods, playing an instrument of music, went out towards the world to find the golden ball, because Inzana wept. And into the world he went, till he came to the nether cliffs that stand by the inner mountains in the soul and heart of the earth, where the earthquake dwelleth alone, asleep, but astir as he sleeps, breathing and moving his legs, and grunting loud. What? Inzana calls up the thunder. Where'd the snake come from? Why is there a giant toad? What story is this illustrating? I mean, it's a nice picture. Reminds me of like a tarot card. Huh. What was the sense? Before the picture rudely interrupted. Breathing and moving his legs, and grunting aloud. In the dark. Then, in the ear of the earthquake, Lepang Tung said a word that only the gods may say, and the earthquake started to his feet and flung the cave away. The cave wherein he slept between the cliffs, and shook himself and went galloping abroad, and overturned the mountains that hid the golden ball, and bit the earth beneath them, and hurled their crags about, and covered himself with rocks and fallen hills, and went back ravening and growling to the soul of the earth, and there he lay down and slept again for 100 years. And the golden ball rolled free, passing under the shattered earth, and so rolled back to Pagana. And Lepang Tung came home to the onyx step, and took the dawn child by the hand, and told not what he had done, but said it was the earthquake, and went away to sit at the feet of the gods. But Inzana went and patted the earthquake on the head, for she said it was dark and lonely in the soul of the earth. Thereafter, returning step by step, Chalcedony, onyx, what the hell is Chalcedony? I gotta look that up. Chalcedony, I assume it's a type of stone. Probably a white stone. Oh, it's a bluish white stone. Okay. Neat. the Chakudoni Onyx, up the stairway of the gods. She cast her golden ball from the threshold afar into the blue to gladden the world in the sky, and laughed to see it go. And far away, Trogul, Trogul, upon the utter rim, turned a page that was numbered 6 in a cipher that none might read. And as the golden ball went through the sky to gleam on lands and cities, there came the fog towards it, stooping as he walked with his dark brown cloak about him. And behind him slunk the night. And as the golden ball rolled past the fog, suddenly night snarled and sprang upon it and carried it away. Hastily, Inzana gathered all the gods and said, "The night hath seized my golden ball, and no god alone can find it now, for none can say how far the night may roam, who prowls all round us and out beyond the worlds." At the entreaty of their dawn-child, all the gods made themselves stars for torches, and far away through all the sky followed the tracks of night, as far as he prowled abroad. And at one time Slid, with the Pleiades in his hand, came nigh to the golden ball, and at another, Yaharneth Lahai, holding Orion for a torch, but lastly, Limpang Tung, bearing the morning star, found the golden ball far away under the world, near the lair of night. And all the gods together seized the ball, and night, turning, smote out the torches of the gods, and thereafter slunk away. And all the gods in triumph marched up the gleaming stairway of the gods, all praising little Limpang Tung, who through the chase had followed night so close in search of the golden ball. Limpang Tung likes his balls, what can he say? Got his cock to help him out. Then, far below on the world, a human child cried out to the dawn child for the golden ball, and Inzana ceased from her play that illumined the world and sky, and cast the ball from the threshold of the gods to the little human child that played in the fields below, and would one day die. And the child played all day long with the golden ball, down in the little fields where the humans live, and went to bed at evening and put it beneath his pillow, and went to sleep, and no one worked in all the world, because the child was playing. And the light of the golden ball streamed up from under the pillow, and went out through the half-shut door, and shone in the western sky. And Yaharneth Lahai in the night-time tiptoed into the room, and took the ball gently, for he was a god, away from under the pillow, and brought it back to the dawn child to gleam on an onyx step. But someday the night shall seize the golden ball, and carry it right away and drag it down to its lair. And Slid shall dive from the threshold into the sea, to see if it be there, and coming up when the fishermen draw their nets, shall find it not, nor yet discover it among the sails. Limpang Tung shall seek among the birds, and shall not find it when the cock is mute, and up the valley shall go Umbradum to seek among the crags. And the hound, the thunder, shall chase the eclipse, and all the gods go seeking with their stars, but never find the ball. And men, no longer having light of the golden ball, shall pray to the gods no more, who having no worship, shall be no more the gods. These things be hidden even from the gods. Let me note down the page. Page 47. Because we are going to stop there for tonight, because these chapters are a bit lengthy. And it is getting about time for me. I hope everyone enjoyed that. It was great to get back to Lord Dunsany. I almost feel like this is kind of retconning the Gods of Pagana, because a lot of the details are changing. I feel like the sea god was named not Slid in the other book. Let me actually look that up real fast. The Gods of Pagana, PDF. Let's see here. Let me Control F. Get out of here, AI system. I don't care. Control F. Slid. Oh. Yeah, Slid is in the Gods of Pagana. Okay, I was wrong. It's just been a while since I read that one. But that will be it for tonight. Tomorrow, let me consult my calendar. Thank God I started using calendar. Tomorrow, I am playing Slay the Princess for the first time. Merrick Vespa was kind enough to gift it to me for Christmas, so I'm going to go and play that tomorrow. Looking forward to it. I know very little about the game. All I know is what I saw when I was looking for a background image to use for the thumbnail. So, I will see everyone tomorrow. We will try not to kill the princess, because I think she looks cute. So, everyone have a fantastic Tuesday. Have a fantastic New Year's if I don't see you tomorrow. Take care, fan gang. Sorry, I forgot. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. See you tomorrow, fan gang.